The world knew him as an invincible force, a martial arts deity who single-handedly shattered Hollywood's walls of prejudice. Bruce Lee, a name synonymous with absolute physical perfection and philosophical brilliance. But tonight, let us turn off the blinding spotlights. Let us strip away the burning aura of fame. What remains behind the curtains? A man utterly isolated, shivering in agonizing physical pain that tore his flesh apart. And in the shadows, an invisible entity. A sinister curse foretold centuries ago in the Lee family lineage, patiently waiting to swallow every firstborn male who carried his blood. 2 deaths, 2 generations. A script so twisted that no sane Hollywood screenwriter would ever dare to write it. Was it merely a cruel cosmic coincidence? Or was it a blood debt that Bruce Lee signed with destiny? To exchange for eternal glory? Let us return to the night of July 20th, 1973. Betty Ting Pei's apartment. Bruce Lee complains of a blinding headache, a pressure so intense it feels as if his skull is about to explode. Betty gives him a single tablet of Equagesic, a prescription painkiller. He lies down on the bed, closes his eyes, and never wakes up again. By the time ambulance number 413 arrives, the master of martial arts is already a cold corpse. But the mystery begins here. Why did it take the police over 2 hours to transport him to a distant hospital instead of the nearest medical center? Why did the initial testimonies completely contradict the official medical records? The autopsy report concluded, death by misadventure caused by cerebral edema due to a hypersensitivity to Equagesic. A man with a superhero's physique, who could do push-ups on 2 fingers, who could unleash a punch with the kinetic force of a small truck, dead because of a tiny pill? The world refused to believe it. His family could not swallow this explanation. Mad conspiracy theories spread like wildfire. Was he struck by the legendary dim mak, the touch of death, by traditional masters furious that he taught kung fu to Westerners? Was he assassinated by the triads, or was he poisoned by an ancient curse? The greatest mistake mankind ever made was looking only at Bruce Lee's rippling muscles and lightning-fast kicks, while completely ignoring his mind. Long before he was a fighter, Bruce Lee was a student of philosophy. To Bruce, martial arts was never about punching and kicking to prove dominance. It was a vehicle for spiritual liberation. He wrote in his personal diary, "Martial arts is the honest expression of the human self. To trap oneself in a rigid style is spiritual suicide. Be like water. Water is soft, yet it can penetrate the hardest rock. Water is formless, yet it can crush massive dams." Bruce Lee wanted his life to flow like a river, wild and unchained. But ironically, Hollywood did not want a yellow-skinned philosopher. They wanted to turn him into a fighting novelty to print money. They denied him the lead role in the Kung Fu television series, simply because his face was too Asian. That burning resentment carved a bleeding wound in Bruce's soul. He was torn between 2 worlds, the detached Taoist philosophy of the East and the aggressive ambition of the West. To smash that wall of prejudice, he forced himself to become an unstoppable machine. He never allowed himself to be weak, not even for a single second. To maintain the illusion of being invincible, Bruce Lee pushed his body into a state of ascetic torture far beyond human limits. He trained 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. He forced his body fat down to a terrifying 0%. His body was no longer flesh and blood. It was a block of steel forged under extreme pressure, but even steel snaps. In 1970, during a heavy weightlifting exercise without warming up, a sickening snap echoed through the room. His 4th sacral nerve was severely damaged. Doctors told him bluntly, "You will never kick again. You will be lucky to walk normally." For a man who defined his entire existence through movement, this was a death sentence. Yet through sheer manic willpower, Bruce refused to surrender. He lay in bed for 6 months, writing thousands of pages on martial theory, and forced his legs to stand up again. He rose from the ashes in Fist of Fury and the Big Boss. But what was the cost of this resurrection? To numb the chronic pain ravaging his spine every night, Bruce Lee began abusing powerful analgesics. Furthermore, he underwent surgery to completely remove the sweat glands from his armpits, believing that sweat stains on camera ruined his flawless aesthetic. How does a human body cool itself without sweat glands? It was like a race car running at maximum RPM with a completely dismantled radiator. In truth, the biological machine named Bruce Lee had already broken down 3 years before his actual death. He was living on borrowed time, but if we only explain his death through medicine, we ignore the darkest corner of Bruce Lee's life. A dark corner painted with the mysterious spiritualism of Eastern culture, the curse of the firstborn sons. Few know that before Bruce Lee was born, his father had a firstborn son. That child died mysteriously and suddenly shortly after birth. The elders believed the Lee family had disturbed an ancient grave or incurred a spiritual debt, vowing to claim every firstborn male to extinguish their lineage. When Bruce was born in 1940, terror gripped his parents. To deceive the Grim Reaper, to put on a theatrical play for death that this child was not a boy. His parents gave him a girl's name, Sai-Fan, meaning Little Phoenix. Throughout his childhood, he was raised as a girl. He wore dresses and had his ear pierced. They thought they had tricked destiny. But destiny is not so easily fooled. As Bruce grew older, shedding the name Sai-Fan to become a man exploding with masculine energy, the ghost of the curse knocked on his door once again. His closest friends recalled that Bruce was perpetually haunted by horrific nightmares. He would wake up at 3 a.m. drenched in cold sweat. He told his wife, Linda, that he saw a dark shadow, a faceless ancient warrior standing at the foot of his bed, staring at him with ancestral malice. He once told a friend, "I know I won't live long. I will die young, but I will go out in a massive explosion, like a shooting star before it goes dark." He felt the noose of fate tightening daily, and that noose did not just threaten him. It hung directly over the head of his young son, Brandon Lee. When Bruce Lee passed away, Brandon was only an 8-year-old boy. He grew up under the titanic shadow of his father. The world looked at Brandon and demanded he be Bruce Lee version 2.0. But Brandon hated it. He wanted to be recognized for his own craft. After years of struggling, Brandon's defining moment finally arrived. The Crow, in 1993. The script followed Eric Draven, a musician brutally murdered by a gang, who is resurrected by a mystical crow to seek vengeance from beyond the grave. A film about rising from the dead. Yet, it became the very place that sent Brandon to an early grave. The fatal scene. Brandon's character walks into the room. A supporting actor fires the prop gun from less than 15 feet away. A loud bang echoes. Brandon collapses. The director shouts, "Cut!" The crew laughs, assuming he is joking. But Brandon does not stand up. Blood gushes from his abdomen, soaking his white shirt. The fragment had pierced his spine. After 6 hours of futile emergency surgery, Brandon Lee took his last breath at the age of 28. Just weeks before his wedding now. Hold on to your seat, because the next detail will chill you to the bone. 15 years before Brandon died, his father, Bruce Lee, wrote and directed Game of Death. In that movie, the protagonist is shot on a film set because a killer swapped a prop bullet for a real one. Do you hear the echo of destiny? The very scenario Bruce Lee wrote on a piece of paper as entertainment for moviegoers became the exact real-life script of his only son's death 20 years later. Reality copied art with terrifying surgical precision. Who wrote this horrific script for the Lee family? Could it be that the faceless entity from Bruce's nightmares after taking the father patiently waited for the son to reach the peak of his glory, only to execute him using the exact method the father had carelessly envisioned? At Lakeview Cemetery in Seattle, Washington, two graves lie quietly side by side beneath the shade of ancient cedar trees. The wind blows gently here, and the rain falls like a soft, endless, melancholy symphony. Here lie two men, a father and a son. Two lives that burned blindingly bright but tragically short. They lived, they fought, they pushed past the absolute zenith of human capability, only to be brought down by the invisible hand of fate. Some will leave this video believing completely in a blood-soaked family curse. Others will explain it away with medical anomalies and gross negligence on a chaotic movie set. But in the end, does it truly matter? Bruce Lee did not die because of a pill or a superstitious omen. He died because he lived too fast. He condensed 100 years of human energy into 32 years of life. He lived so intensely that this fragile world simply did not have enough room to hold him. He vanished at the absolute peak of beauty and talent, leaving behind a void that a century later no one has been able to fill. Water can flow and water can crash. Bruce Lee chose both. He crashed through the ancient prejudices of the world, and then he flowed into the eternal stream of time. His physical body has returned to dust, but his philosophy, his spirit, and his unfiltered essence have transformed into an invisible body of water, flowing through the minds of millions of fighters, actors, and dreamers seeking freedom across this plain.